The first portion of this training video will focus on core regulated modules, which will include staff records, resident records, support plans, transfer forms, residential service agreements, incident reports, and complaints. Medications and the roster will be included with the other optional modules, just because even though they're regulated, they're counted as optional within the program because SRSs usually already have more robust methods in place with payroll software or agreements already in place with the pharmacy with medications, printing out the required sign sheets, etc. Okay, so before we start, I think one of the important things is to make sure that you have a shortcut on your favorites bar or on your desktop. You can usually just drag it over like that, and then you can click on that every time, or you can do the same and drag to your desktop, and then you've got a shortcut there, and that'll go straight to your site just to make things easier. The same you can do on the iPad as well. On the iPad it's pretty much this kind of thing. You have the browser, press share, and then you'll have an option to add the icon to the home screen, and you'll have the same effect there. Under administration, you'll just want to make sure, and organization here, you'll just want to make sure that you've got all your rooms and beds displayed correctly, and your information with respective resident information. So your room and beds will reflect your total amount of rooms and the total amount of beds within each room. So room 1 has a total of 2 beds, room 2 has a total of 2 beds, and so on. So at the moment my registered bed is 46, and I've only got 45 here. So I've got a room 30 and it's got a total of 1 bed, so I'll put that in. And then now that should equal out and reflect what my SRS looks like. Next, you'll already have this document. You'll just need to copy over all the information. And so you've got a intro information for your SRS here. Finances, service provided, house rules, resident concerns, routines. Copy of all that information over into there, and then under reports you'll see that here, and then these last few headings, this is what gets copied over into the residential service agreements as well. So you want to make sure that this document is filled out. And then of course everything like this in your RSAs and the other documents that we'll look at, incident reports, things like that, it's always better to have a printout for auditing, just in case something happens, internet goes down, your computer's not working, something like that. Information always needs to be able to be audited and readily accessible. So another thing here is you can also add, make sure all your information for the SRS is correct as well, and then you can also add a logo, and then in different places that will also show up for printouts and things like that. So here you'll see your dashboard. This is what you'll first see when you log in, which basically just gives a bit of a summary for the rest of the program. The last few incidents to occur, complaints, handovers, support plans that are due for renewal, private messages, and appointments. So to start off with, we'll have a look at staff. So in the sidebar here we've got all the different categories. Under people we've got residents, staff, contacts. So under residents and then under staff you'll both have current and discharged. So discharge is basically staff that are no longer employed by you, and residents is residents that are no longer residing in your SRS. So once they're discharged, they'll have a separate list that to go to. And then within the actual record, you'll be able to edit and click is discharged. And also, if you have a staff member that this person might be a carer or a doctor or a general login for community visitors or something like that, and they're not part of your staff, then you'll just click this to exclude them from the staff register report as well. So if we create a user here, you'll see that there's orange fields and grey fields. The orange fields are regulation required fields, so to remain compliant you need to have information in these fields. The grey fields are just for reference, so things like personal email, mobile number, they're not required, but they're helpful to have for you to refer to. The login tab is if you want that user to be able to log in to the program, or if they're just there for your staff records. If you want them to log in, then you'll need to give them an email address, either their real email address, or if you make up an email address, if it's a general login like carer@yoursrsname.com, or their name at yoursrsname.com if it really exists or if it doesn't, and then a password. So password can be a mixture of numbers and letters and a minimum of 8 characters, I think it is. So if we put in, that should be enough, and you'll give something like that. If their name, we'll say their name is Tom Evans. Next we'll make sure we've got a position filled in, and you select the start date for the user. Then the role. So the role will be a set of permissions that we define. There's a role section under administration. So you'll start off with a few default ones, and they will contain a set of permissions that you then apply to the chosen user staff member. So this person might be a cleaner, and we might create a new role that's just for cleaner and only gives them like task lists or notes or something if they're only doing like maintenance list, things like that. We'll have a look at that in more detail soon. Also, the asterisk fields that you'll notice, they're required to be able to save the document. So that's the minimum that we've got in there, and then we're allowed to save. So that person's come up the top. When you click on them, you'll get the detail view until you click edit, then you'll get the edit view. You can also add an image for the person. So if we go back to the detail view, you'll see the information that we've entered comes up here. You can see the missed information that's in orange that needs to still go in. Finance information, contacts, reviews, you can add staff reviews here. It's just very basic. And then documents, this is where you can add their certificates or general files, and a position description that they can access within the staff roster as well. And within each person's login, they also have their own profile where they can click on, edit their own information, add their own certificates, and reset their own password. So now that we've got that person created, if we go and have a look at roles in a bit more detail, you'll see the ones in green are actually the default ones that you start with. So you'll see that you'll already have the staff one, and when you click on it, you'll actually see what permissions are set. So staff don't have access to edit or see other staff information. They don't have administration information access. When you have someone like a manager, you'll have full permission, and if there's not, then you just add it and edit as you need. So if we look at an existing staff member to check what that access looks like. We've got Peter Watson here, who's a carer. So if we have a look at the roles, we look at the carer role, we can see that they don't have any permission to see anything, any information on the dashboard. The sidebar, nothing's visible on the sidebar apart from progress notes. They don't have permission to view other residents' progress notes or edit, they only can create. So this would be an example if you had a carer or a general carer login that maybe takes out a resident for coffee every week, and then you want them to log in and create a note for that person. So if they log in, as we can see on the sidebar here, all they can see is progress notes. On the dashboard they don't get to see any information. When they go to progress notes, they don't see any other information, but they can create a new progress note. And they'll select the resident that it is. If it was a general login like carer at SRS name or something, then they can put their name in as well. They'll create a note for that person and then save it back, and then they can log out. Now if we go over and have a look at residents, very similar to the staff records, this is resident records. We'll have a list for our discharge residents and our current residents. When we click on a resident, we'll see all their detail information. From here we have shortcuts to be able to add a service agreement, add a transfer form, an incident. You can see their general information here, the same orange fields, which are the regulation required fields. This compliance bar just refers to any fields that might not be filled in, so this resident has everything filled in. If we go to another resident that might be a bit newer, this compliance bar is not full. If we click on it, we'll get a list of areas that are regulation required which haven't been filled in that we need to fill in. And this includes the interim plan, the ongoing plan, service agreement, and certain fields like the pension number, nationality, things like that. If we edit this resident, it's a very similar layout to the staff again, with the orange fields and the grey fields. The finance section, you'll see these drop downs to select the payment frequency and the payment method. If there's a method in there that doesn't exist or a frequency, you can just add it here and then that'll add it to the list thereafter. You'll also have an option down here for drop down lists, which does the same thing. You can add and remove from these drop down lists. This is appointment types for appointments, the payment method and the payment frequency we just saw before. Next we'll look at support plans. So first we look at interim support plan. The familiar categories you'll see here, and edit to edit the fields. So basically there is a slight variation of how different SRSs do their support plans. So this ends up the best universal way to be able to do it. So you just have the main categories, and within there you just enter the information as you see fit for that resident, which should have everything that you need for compliance. Also within the interim support plan, when you first create a new resident and start their support plan, you have a template. So basically what that is you might have the same information that you put in every time as a reminder, and then edit that for that resident. So you can edit your template and put whatever you want in your template. Then for every new resident after that, you can basically paste that template information and then go off that and edit as you need, which saves a lot of time. So the interim support plan is the same information that's updated until you're finished with the interim support plan, and then you move on to the ongoing support plan. And when that's created for the first time, that will ask to copy all the information from the interim support plan, and then you'll update it from there. So basically it's the same layout, but the difference is if I edit the ongoing support plan and make any changes, then that will update here, and I'll have an additional plan added to the history. So in the history I'll have all the plans that go back, and if I was the person to actually review that, I have an option to edit that support plan as well. Also, you're able to print out in portrait mode like that, and just like any other area of the program of importance, best to print out and keep a copy that can be audited if any issues. So if we have a new resident here that we've just set up with the date of arrival as today, selected room bed, just put in some of the basic information. Then when we check on the dashboard, we'll see that for this new resident Ken, in 1 day interim plans due, so that'll go down to 0 days tomorrow, then into negative. So if we go ahead and create the interim plan, the first time we'll just paste all the template info, and this could be PCA or anybody who's doing the interim support plan made easier. And then now you've got all the prompts and all the actual template information as well to be able to go through and edit specific to that resident. So now if we check the dashboard again, we'll see that next the ongoing support plan will be due in 27 days for Ken, and that will bring up a reminder when that goes into negative days as well. That'll get flagged. So now if we go ahead and create the ongoing support plan for the first time, it will come up asking if you want to create it for the first time under this logged in user, and we'll copy everything from the interim plan over, and as you can see you'll edit it from there, and then we'll have all the tabs up here to view incidents or progress notes, appointments or readings or transfers since that resident's come to the facility, and then we'll save that back. So next we'll look at the residential service agreement. So as we saw earlier, the history of the service agreements will come up here in this tab. To create a new one, the shortcuts here, add service agreement, you'll fill in the fields as required, so it's just a template form, so indefinite period of stay, fill out the fields as you need here, individual specifics, finances, agreement changes. You have an option to add a condition report that will come at the end of the RSAs, so this is just optional. If you leave it blank, it won't print out with the RSA. Yeah, if we do one for now, you can add items and then things like that, and you'll run it down and add a new item as you go down, things like that. The SRS info, as we discussed earlier as well, this is taken from the information for prospective residents, so once that's filled in under your organisation tab, that information will pull from there and come into here and print out with your RSA. So once all the fields are filled in, you save that. So now that you've got a detailed view of your service agreement that you just created, you'll just check that the information is correct, because all of this information is being pulled from the resident record here as well. You'll note down here that you'll have these buttons to be able to digitally sign. This is optional, so basically if I print this out now, then I'll get the resident to sign it with a pen, then I'll put that in a folder, and this copy will just be for referencing. Alternatively, you can click, if you had a sign pad or if you had an iPad or something like that, if this works for your SRS, you can use this, and what would then happen is that this becomes digitally signed, and then this would end up becoming your original. So you'll still print it out and that would be referred to as well, but this can be counted as actually being your reference document that can be counted as original as well. So if we scroll down here, we'll see the areas that got pulled in from the information for prospective residents. Then on a new page will come out the condition report, and then that can be printed out as well, with a resident being able to put their comments in as well. But again, that's optional. So if we print out and we have a look, it'll print out like this. And then we'll see all the signed areas, which if we didn't press on those buttons, they'll come out blank. And then if we go over to the office section, you'll see RSA, and then this will bring up the most recent residential service agreement for each of your residents. This is the easiest way for somebody to have access to for auditing. So if you wanted to go through the RSAs, and then when you click on that, that'll come up with the latest that we just created. So next we'll look at the transfer forms. Similar to the RSAs, there'll be a history of the transfers for that resident. And if we wanted to add a new transfer, we'd click add transfer here, or we'd go to the transfer form section, which has the full history for all the residents, and click add there. When we click on a already created one, we'll see the information come up in a detail form that can be printed out. The care summary is the information for each resident that you can edit here. When you're setting up the resident, you normally enter this information in as well. And when we go to print this out, it will look like this, and print out with the care summary on the next page as well. In transfer form section, we'll get a full history of all the transfer for all the residents, which would be the area which would be best for auditing. And then you can click on each of the transfers there. So next we'll have incidents. You'll see under each resident the incidents that they were involved in as history. Disregard this text, it's just for testing purposes, it's not a real information from an incident. And then you'll also see the incident section under the office. So this will be the easiest place for somebody to reference the latest incidents, all the incidents, or auditing, and where you'll create an incident from. So incident might look like this. When you print it out, you'll get a report number. You can edit it. If the person that created it is logged in, you can actually edit all the fields if there was any mistakes. And the follow-up field is unlocked for all staff. So if we go ahead and create a new incident, we'll put in the date and time, the type of incident, the resident, if it's a resident incident. We have some information up here to help as well, so information on what's a notifiable incident and links to go to if that needs to be filled in. If it is a notifiable incident and you do these steps online, then it's still best to have an incident in your local copy that refers to that and any reference numbers, etc. Next, you'll put a description of the incident, including all this information, what action was taken. This can be left blank for further follow-up notes if needed, and it can be updated later by any staff member. Sorry. You'll put here whoever was notified and when. Save it back, or you can save and copy it to the handover. The handover is staff communication for staff notes that's happening around the SRS, and you've got an option to copy progress notes and incidents back to here as well. So that's pretty much it for the incidents. And then we'll have complaints, which is set up very similar to the incidents. You can create from here, reference all your complaints or audit from here, so this will be under Office and Complaints, and very similar format to the incident reports. You'll have a complaint number, you'll put in the complainant, the date and time, and nature of the complaint description, action taken, and again this is like further follow-up, unlock to all staff. And similar to the incidents, the person that created it has full access to be able to edit all the fields to rectify any mistakes. The staff reports, you'll have your staff register here. Again, if you've got a staff member that shouldn't be in there, maybe you've got a carer or a doctor to log in or something and they're not part of your staff, you need to make sure under staff that you tick them. So if they're not an actual staff member, exclude them here from the staff register report and they won't show up in that staff register report. So this is a good place to look and make sure you've got all the fields actually filled in for each section that needs to be. You'll have your CPR due date report, so that's based on the fields filled in from the staff. The orange fields, you'll see the last CPR date. So once you enter that, that'll be used in the report to calculate when it's due. And then for the first aid and things like that, that will be attached in your certificates. So basically, if your staff records need to be audited, the AO will be viewing your actual staff records list, which are your users, and they'll be able to click and view the documents. So if we look at one that's actually got the certificates there, and then they'll be able to click and that will load up there depending on what kind of certificate document it is. They'll be able to view, make sure the information for the correct fields are there as well. Okay, now we'll look at staff communication. So if we see on the sidebar here under communication, private messages, this is used to send a message from user to user, so it's not to go to their email, it's actually to go to their login. So I can select one or more staff, so if I were to select a few staff, I'll include myself, and this might be for a staff meeting or something like that, and including reminders or anything, and that will send out to those staff. So then when they log in on their dashboard, they'll see a new private message, and then they'll click on that and it'll come up with the message, and then once read it'll go away, but then they can still see it from their private messages and all their sent items as well. So that's pretty straightforward. Handover is staff communication for things going around the SRS, so it might be any simple things of just notifying of what's happening within the SRS. It's very simple, it's just add a new handover, and then it already knows what the time is and the date and the person logged in, so it will just add that note. From other areas of the program, incidents and progress notes, you can choose to save to handover, so those things funnel back into one area. So the idea of handovers is, if my last shift was yesterday, I can go back to yesterday and read what's been happening since and have all that information. Progress notes is same as care notes, so instead of generic SRS note, this will be a resident specific note. So we'll select our resident, put the note in, same, we can save and copy to handover, or we can just save it. Now within that resident, they'll have a history of all their progress notes specific to them, as well as the history of all their notes when a new ongoing support plan review is underway. You also have areas from around the program that you can view, and one of them will be the progress notes, so you can read back on what other staff or carers or whoever putting the notes in are saying. Same with seeing their incidents and their appointments and their readings if you're taking their weights or anything like that, and their previous transfers. Next we'll look at appointments. The appointments will bring you to a calendar layout where you can see what's on for the week. You can change to the month. You can click in the open area, so today's highlighted. You click in the open area, you can create an appointment which will then fill in that date and time. You can choose whether it's a resident appointment, a staff appointment, or a business appointment. So it can just be a general SRS appointment, like CPR training or something like that. And then you put in the appointment purpose. It can be anything you like. If it doesn't exist in the list, then just click plus to add it. Then that makes it easier to use the same ones over and over again, easier to filter later. You put in the location, any notes, consultation outcome can be filled in later if it's required. And then if you're missing something, it'll come up and say it. So when I click resident there, it'll come up with the list of residents to select from. And same with staff, if it's a staff appointment, it'll come up there. So then for today, that residence appointment will come up. If I want to change the date or time, I can do it here. Now that person will come up tomorrow. The appointments you'll see with the arrows going in a circle, they're recurring appointments. So up here you'll see the appointments list, that just comes up with the full list, and the recurring appointment list. So if we have an appointment, it could be an injection every 2 weeks, or a GP appointment for somebody important every 3 months. You might have a few recurring appointments that are very important as of note. You'd create it here, same as you would a normal appointment, but you'll just put the amount of days in, and then that will thereafter recur as a reminder. So it doesn't come up as individual appointments for the future every 2 days. It'll calculate that and come up as a reminder and show up here. So it'll be the same original information, but it'll just repeat on the days for you to see. So when you log in on your dashboard, you'll get the calendar here and the appointments for the day load up, and if it's a recurring appointment, you'll see it come up on the day. Next we'll look at medications. So under Office we'll see medications here in the sidebar. We'll see a medication list, a full list of any medications you add for your residents, and administer tab. So there's a few ways that you can use this. For the most part, SRSs will probably have everything being done with the pharmacy and printouts of sign sheets, so this might not be used at all, or this might be used for only certain parts. So for an example, if this SRS might just be using it for some non-pack meds, which are some creams and treatments, and add those for under the resident, and then if it's non-packed, then there'll be certain times certain set times that will be applied. So 12 o'clock for that one, and certain times for that one as well. And then what you'll have the ability to do is be able to print out sign sheets for those non-packed medications that you added. And then you can also print out a summary sheet and sort it by time or filter the resident. So that would be non-packed, and then you could also click here for an individual sign sheet to be generated. And then you'll have PRN, so you can add a PRN medication, and that won't have a set time. You can print a sign sheet for that PRN medication that you've added. Same like that. And then you have the option of printing out a daily sign sheet for pack medication, which is again optional. If you have blister packs from the pharmacy, this is just an option to be able to print out a daily sheet for all residents, which SRSs again would have probably their own signing in place for this already, but using this would basically just set it for each resident for which time they'd have medication signed, and then each day that will be printed out, and then an easy visual, and you can sort it by room number or bed or table as you've put it in. So here we would add a new medication which looks like this. We'd select the resident, the start date of the medication, the medication name with any other descriptive information of the name there, the type. So there's non-packed and PRN. There's no option for packed because that's assumed that's done with the pharmacy already, because they're already printing out the medication charts and more than likely your sign sheets and things like that. So because that's already done with a system in place, the program only has the option for doing the non-packed and PRN as adding for medication. For signing, as you saw, there's the daily sheet, and then in the administer tab we'll see a bit later, you can sign for the pact as well, but not adding any medications because that's all done through the pharmacy. So if we select this as non-pact, and then you'd put in whatever information would be necessary. And then the status, if it's pending because it's not in place yet, then it won't show up for sign sheets. If it's ongoing, then it'll sign up for sign sheets. If it's ceased, it won't show up anymore. It'll go a bit into history. And then if it's ceased, you'll add a cease date as well. And then frequency and directions, whether it's self-medicated or not. And then because it's non-packed, it's come up to add times. So you'd add when this medication would be given, if it's multiple times. And then it's saying that there has to be something in the frequency and directions. So then that's the one that we've just added then. Again, we can generate a sign sheet for that. And it'll be coming up yellow like that if it's self-medicated, and it will sort. So the way that it's sorting at the moment is the ongoing medications, and if there's any pending, it'll come at the very top, then ongoing, then self-medicated down the bottom, and if it's ceased, it won't show up unless you add it into the filter, and then all the cease will come up, all the previous medications that are no longer being administered. So that's one way to do medications, which is printing out sign sheets, and a familiar way that we would already be used to. The administer tab is a new way to do sign sheets, to sign and administer for medications. This might be a little bit too advanced for your setup, or it might be something you might just try for one type of medication and see how you go. Basically how it works is you have a list of your residents down the side. Each resident has a card come on the right hand side. You can filter this as well and sort it. For this resident, it's come up with his information, the day that the card's showing for, the packed medication. This was set in the settings that he only has medication at these times. So if I brought lunch back up, and then it had for the table number as well, if medication's given at the table, it only makes it easier to be able to sort by table if needed, if they have that. Up here as well, you can add information for packed medication, non-packed, and PRN, which just gives a bit more of a visual as you're going down. So a bit of flexibility on how you view the information. So for example, if we were using this only for packed medication, basically all you'd be doing is going down the list at breakfast time and clicking for each person. If there's any code of note, and then any additional notes as well, you put that in. If you just click administer without doing anything else, then it just comes up as green administered. You'd go to the next person, breakfast, administer, as they're being given the medication, with seeing a photo and their information at the same time. Most likely this will be done with an iPad walking around. If there is a code to add, you'd click that and add any notes that you need, and then that will come up as yellow like that as well. And then you'd go through that at every time slot as well. Lunch, go down, and basically what you're doing there is that you're marking that as administered. When you go back and look at one, it knows what time that was done, as long as that's like within the time frame for breakfast, the person who did it, any code, any notes, and then if there was any note missing, the person can edit it and go in there. Then what we have is that we have a sign history. So the sign history for August for that resident would come up with the staff name's initials that was logged in and the code color, and then you click on it for a little bit more information, and then you've got a color chart down the bottom. Also, that would be something at the end of each month you'd want to print out, and then you have the option to view all the sign history for all residents. So then next would be the non-packed. As we added the medication before in that format, when we chose non-packed and then we added the times, it will show up for that resident in that list. And then same like packed medication, you'd go down for the time slots for that resident if you've given the medication, and you'd click and administer, and same again if there was a code of concern there and notes to add, you'd do that as well. And then you'll again get some options to cease the medication or edit the medication from here, and to print out a sign history, which will come up for the non-packed medications with the multiple times for each medication, and again show up like that. And then the same with PRN if that's used. That's a little bit simpler because there's no time slots. You'd click the plus, you'd add the time, it'll come up with the current time as default, the dose of the medication, any notes that you need to, and you'd click administer and it'll come up with the time that it's given. And then when you look at the sign history, you'll just get a sign history for the medications that were given in a list format like this, because it's PRN and not set times. And then if there's any issue with somebody making a mistake, then you have the option to edit, and you can even click unadminister, which will take that out if that wasn't actually given and that was put in as mistake. Lastly, we have an option to actually change the card date up here. So resident record will just go to their resident record under residents. Select date would actually change the date on the card. So if we go to yesterday, you'll see it'll turn red, it'll say the day and date, and we'll actually look at what was yesterday. So that's to be able to edit a previous day if there was an issue. And then, so if I were to go to yesterday and edit something that was an issue yesterday, or change a note, that's there as an option, and then we change back to today. Okay, next we'll have a look at roster. That's accessible under reports for staff. When they click on roster, this is what they'll see. So again, this is another module like medications where the SRS might have something more robust in place that contributes to payroll, etc. But this is enough to suffice for compliance and is an option to use if you need. So basically, this is what the staff would see. They can click in on their own logged in person to be able to add a note. If there's anything of concern or anything to do with their shift they want to pass on to management. And then in the edit area that you can go to from administration roster, or click on the edit button, it goes to the same page. You'll get a similar layout, but you'll have this extra add staff duty, and you'll be able to click to edit all the hours, and then you can see that name's now flagged as a different color because there's a note that that person left to read. So if we go back to what the staff see, so the staff can't click on the areas, only their own name. The green comes up for the first aider for the day. So when you edit for a person, you'll have these boxes that you can tick. You'll have these times that you can add. You can delete to clear. You choose the staff member. This is if you want to choose the order, if you want to put them up the top or group the same person together, because you can actually add two of the same person if they've got two different duties. So I can add, for this person, it might be the cook. I'll put them up the top, pick the times, and then that person might be the first aider for the same day and might be doing the next day's sleepover. And then that new person will come up here. And then it didn't come up the very top because this person's also put as number 1 as well. So that's how it works with the ordering. So basically it won't calculate anything like breaks or anything like that. It'll just give you the total hours of what you've actually added there, and then you can click on here to delete the row. You can also click up here to delete all entries to start again. If I want to navigate to other weeks, I can do here. So last week, the staff can do that from their side as well. They can navigate to the last week. So what would happen if you want to create a new week for next week? You would click on the new week and it'll ask you if you want to create a blank one or copy from a previous week. So if we look at August, we'll see when there's the colored circles, that means there's data there. So I can either click and copy from last week, or if you've got a 2-week rotating roster, you can click from the previous week and copy from there. So that's copied from not last week but the week before. The only other thing to note is that the staff member can actually click on their position description. That's if you choose to put something in their position description area. That's accessible under staff, under the staff member position description here. You'll just add whatever information that you want in there for the staff member to be able to view, and then as their position changes or anything changes, you can update that. The other area that we'll look at is reports. With the bed list here, this will just give a report of what's already in the program. It'll show the vacancies, all the rooms, and just some information there. And then resident details. This basically just generates a report based on what you put in, so you can have all your residents with just their pension number, Medicare number, and you can tick and untick anything that you like. You might have only a select few residents going to an appointment or something, and you might just pick certain information for those residents, so that just makes it a little bit handy there. Roster we've been over, and information for prospective residents we've been over. Next we've got task lists that you can find under Office, task lists here. Basically this will just be a straightforward task list that you can prioritize, and you can assign to a staff member if you've got somebody in charge of maintenance, or if it's just a task that's to do with another staff member. You can set the priority, you can set a due date, and put whether it's pending or completed, task description, and then once added, high priority will be at the top, then normal, then low, and then all the completed tasks. So if a task completed, you just tick it here, it'll go down the bottom, where you can click it for more information. Next we'll look at invoices, which you'll find under the Office section again. And invoices, again, is one of those modules that most likely the SRS will already have something in place that's a bit more robust and linked in with their existing accounting details and other areas as well. So this one's just pretty straightforward. You know, you put the information in on who it's going to, attention, regarding, from date, to date, days, the status, and then you can add as you need. And they'll stay up there pending, and then once you mark it paid, it'll go down to paid. Just very basic, straightforward invoices section. And here's just an example of what one would look like when you click on it, whether you print it out for PDF to email or print it out to paper. Next we'll look at letters, which again, similar to invoices, just a very simple module, only there just to make things easy. Like as an example, if we were to add a letter here to the doctor, just to show as an example. It just enables us to print something out in letter form with the letterhead already there and the information that we need. When we click print, it'll just print out in that kind of format, and then you can print that out to a PDF, or you can print that out straight to a printer, and that just makes it a little bit easier for that, and then those letters will stay as history in the letter section as well. Next we'll look at bookings. Again, this is a module that may be used, may not be used. When you click on the screen, you'll get the available beds on the right. If you click all, you see all the previous bookings already made. By default it's on future, just so you can focus on the upcoming bookings. So if we create a booking here, this can be used in two ways. One way can be if somebody's calling in to book a room. It might be a PCA or somebody that answered the phone and just wanting to get the main information when they're wanting to stay, and then pass that information on later to the manager. Or this can just be done directly in here and getting the main information. So basically what it is choosing where they want to stay, what optional information you can get over the phone, if any, and then save that, and then the dates that you chose will then come up on the room and bed that you selected, and it'll come up here, and then also show on the dashboard for any pending bookings and when they're coming, and then there'll be a booking section down here as well. So yeah, it's something that might be handy for future bookings that might be a little bit away, and just to keep an eye on, and the countdown on when they're coming. Or it can be used for, again, if multiple people take phone calls, record all the necessary information, pass it on to say the manager, and then the manager can call back and put some more robust information in there and save back. Next we'll look at pharmacy orders. This is very similar to the task list, very straightforward, very simple module. It might suit those SRSs that do like a weekly pharmacy order or a frequent pharmacy order, and residents or staff might come into the office and flag medications that are needed for the next order. So basically it's set up so these 4 medications have not been sent yet, these medications have been sent but have not been received from the pharmacy, and these have all been cleared, so it sorts them out. So basically you just add a new medication, pick the resident, put the medication details, any other notes that you need to, save that, and then you'd basically generate a form. You'd pick the date range. These are back in February, so we'll go back to February and just as an example, you pick any date range that you want, and then it will generate a form based on that date range that you put in, and take the pharmacy details from the organization page where you've put all the other SRS details. So basically, yeah, it'll just print out a pharmacy order that you again can print to PDF or print out and fax or email. And then once that's done, then you'd mark these as sent, the ones that were in that form, and then they'll go down the list to be marked as sent. And then when the next batch get received, they get marked as received. It might not be used, might be used, might be handy, it just depends on the SRS. Next we have a few charts that might be helpful to an SRS. Some of these are a bit high level of care, so might not be used, like a wound register. This gives an option to be able to actually, if we edit this, gives us a chance to be able to add assessments as you go down, like this, a diagram to actually like mark areas. And this actually keeps track of tracing along the side as well. Reposition chart, which is similar, again, might not be used at all. Bowel chart. Behavior chart, which might be helpful. Reading chart, which again, might not be used. One popular way that this is used is to do monthly weights. So basically just add the resident, the weights, you'd put the reading in, you'd say any notes if needed, and then basically when you wanted to do a filter search, you can choose the month, and then it'll come up with any weights for that month for all your residents. And then going back to the ongoing support plan, these weights will show up while doing the review as well. For the rent increase letters, that'll be again an optional module that might not be used, but basically what it does is it allows you to have templates. So you have a letter for all your residents, so you click on one resident. If one's been created before, you can go down the list here as well, and then basically what it is it just puts it in letter form with the letterhead and details. You put in the information, which will save, and then you just update the areas that you need to for the next time. So it's just for time saving. So you can change the current accommodation fee, and then add a new accommodation fee, and then put a date it'll be effective from. And the date of the letter, attention if needed. So then you'll have a intro text that you can put in, which will be like a template kind of text you'll use for all your letters. And then you'll have like a template text here that you can actually choose through the list. So based on the amounts that you put in up here, it'll put those in and calculate to the percentage and things like that as well. And then just a regards area where you can put regards information, and then that'll basically come out like a letter form, and then when you go to print it'll look like this, and then you just get to go through the list and go resident by resident. So yeah, this is just basically set up for a time-saving thing. And lastly, we'll look at meetings, which is accessible under administration, and it'll basically keep a history of all your resident and staff meetings. So you'd basically just add a new one, choose whether it's a staff or a resident meeting, set the date, you'd put in like the agenda, and then save that back, and then that can be printed out and given out on the day. And then once the staff meeting's concluded, you can also add the minutes or while the meeting's going, and then that'll basically just keep a history of all your resident and staff meetings for record.